it is for you guys. Enjoy.
Welcome back to the Thunder. No sound effects tonight, but we do have Thomas Schooley, who's like a sound effect machine himself when it comes to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And here we are after a couple rough weeks to be a Lightning fan in the 2023 offseason. Thomas Schooley, how are you doing? Are you having a good summer?
Well, it's been weird to have a summer. After a couple of years, number one, I had more money in my bank account. So that was weird. Number two, too much time on my hands. It seems like, and even the players, when we're seeing them now on social media out and about and here and there, and it's like, oh, we forgot they actually had lives outside of hockey for the last couple of seasons. So it's actually, I think, good for everybody. Sad the way the season ended, but this next season looks totally different.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about some of the guys we let go. We're going to talk about some of the new guys. We're going to even dive into the draft, which is funny because what do we only have like 2 draft picks going into the offseason? Managed to finagle a couple other draft picks.
Yeah, nothing until the 6th round going into the.
Yeah, it was like a 6th and 2 7ths or something like that. So JBB managed to get us some draft picks. So we're gonna take a look at those guys, and we'll take a look at the current roster and what it looks like. And I don't think the Lightning are going to do much else. I think what we're going to be looking at is kind of what we're going to be looking at for opening night. With a couple changes that can happen based on guys that step up in training camps and some of these younger guys that might be able to get one of these last spots on the roster this year. But a lot of change. And we're also going to talk about some events and things going on as well. So it is good to be back. Jamie Duckworth says, my favorite is Ross Colton. Well, that's a good place to start, Jamie. Ross Colton was a lot of people's favorites, and he was traded just a couple weeks ago to the Colorado Avalanche. 2nd round pick. I actually thought it was a brilliant move to be able to get a 2nd round pick. You could kind of tell things were going not so well with the conversations between the Lightning and Ross Colton. So for JBB to get a 2nd round pick out of Ross Colton, I think that's solid to get something. And you'll see in some of these moves that he was able to get kind of something for nothing, getting a draft pick for the rights for Corey Perry, for example. So,
well, you had to imagine this was the best offer for Ross Colton from us, and we've seen Ross Colton is now going to arbitration. Well, at least he has the arbitration hearing for Colorado. Of course, they can sign him before that, but this had to have been the best offer that we had for him. There was no way we were keeping him. No possible way we were keeping him. From what it seems like he was being offered in Colorado, and for him to go to arbitration for that, then there's no way that the Bolts could have afforded him, even with the loss of the number 17 down there.
Yeah, and I made a couple videos right at the beginning of the offseason, and one of them, I really broke down the roster. And when I was doing that, I kind of looked at it and I was like, they probably going to have to trade Ross Colton, because what happens is, they try to negotiate a contract, and since he's an RFA, we have the rights to him, but he also has the right to get a raise. And, Ross Colton wants a raise too. So obviously they weren't close, and that's when the Lightning probably started to take a look at if they could get anything for him. And the thing was, they couldn't take on any players. They couldn't take on any cap space. So if you watch that video, you could see we were just kind of up against it with the cap. And I had predicted I think it was 3.5, which was super generous. A lot of people said that was a lot. But if you look at kind of his field of work and his career, which is still a short career, He's got a lot of experience for a young player. But I also don't think the Lightning wanted to pay him that much either, because he isn't the best defensive player, or hasn't historically been the best defensive player. But that said, I would have liked to see him, and this is what I proposed, is they do re-sign him and get him up on that second line to get him some more ice time with some better players to see what he can do, because he's got a great shot. But yeah, Ross Colton, one of the greatest goals in Lightning history to clinch the cup in 2021, the second back on the back-to-back. So he will go down in Lightning history for that. But yeah, traded for a second-round pick, which is pretty good considering, JBB was up against, really didn't have any leverage at all. And like you said, he's going to go to arbitration, which means they have a third party come in and say, hey, this is what you're going to have to pay this guy. And that could have really messed up the Lightning with, what they're trying to kind of navigate through with the salary cap.
So I don't know. Do you have the rules for arbitration up there by chance? I have it because I've seen where many people have asked, what does arbitration mean? What can they do at arbitration? So here are the rules surrounding arbitration. A player and team can settle on a deal at any point before the hearing starts. So we'll get into later about Jeannot's hearing, and up until the beginning of that hearing that we can actually sign him. Once the hearing is taking place, the arbitration decision must be issued by email within 48 hours. Arbitration awards can only be 1 or 2 years in length. The players who are on their final year of restricted free agency are only entitled to a 1-year term. The team decides on the awarded term, save for any team elected arbitration. The team can walk away from the arbitration decision if the contract with an average annual value of more than 4.54. So say we are offering Jeannot $2 million, which was what I see a lot of people saying, that we should do that's what he should go for. If the arbitration says, hey, we think he should get $7 million, the Lightning can then release him with no penalty.
And $7 million is not going to happen.
No, not a chance.
People that believe that might be true. So yeah, Ross Colton gone, maybe gone too soon. It kind of hurts after watching some of the playoff games and, seeing who won the Conn Smythe for Vegas, being a former Bolt, and, he kind of left too soon, and Carter Verhaeghe having so much success with Florida. But, you got to think back to the last 5 years with this team and how absolutely stacked they have been. And, we're going to see it again next season. But especially these last 3 seasons with the salary cap only kind of inching up, they really got screwed by the salary cap in this COVID era again, which is kind of funny because back in 2004, the year after the Bolts won the cup was the strike, and that changed the salary cap. And back then it was that was why we lost Brad Richards and had to trade him. So
a lot of people said we got screwed by COVID, but we also won 2 Stanley Cups because of COVID. Because really if that shutting down didn't happen when it did, we had a lot of injuries going into when the shutdown happened. That gave the Bolts a lot of time to fix and get healthy and help us in that bubble and win that first Stanley Cup for the back-to-back.
Yeah. So yeah, Ross Colton, farewell, so long. The next one on here, this one hurt. Pat Maroon, kind of a surprise. I know you're shaking your head. I don't think it hurt the team that much. And that's what we're going to talk about when we get to some of the new guys. The problem with Pat Maroon, he's kind of like a cheerleader guy. He's like a glue guy. Isn't that what John Madden used to say? He's one of them glue guys. He kind of keeps the team together. He's like the voice of the team. But at the end of the day, the NHL is becoming such a young man's game and such a speed game that Pat Maroon was just kind of too slow. So he's a great cheerleader to have on your team, and I think he'll be great in Minnesota. But yeah, he is no longer a Bolt. It was a good run. What was he here? 4 years. Went back to back, 2 with us. Traded to Minnesota, got a 7th round pick out of it. And these picks that we're going to talk about are really important because, like we said, they didn't have a lot of draft picks. And, if you go down to Syracuse and some of the guys that are in the system, it ain't what it used to be, because what it used to be in 2014 and a little bit before that was killer. It was the triplets. It was, these guys that have came up and, won these cups with the Bolts. So they have to really start to kind of address and bring in more players and find kind of these diamonds in the rough like they've done in the past. Any other comments on Patty Maroon?
I like this one from Mike Rotunda. And we're going to share a graphic here in a little bit of projected lineups. And that was actually shared before Maroon was officially traded. So this Maroon might not have been a regular dresser, which in this graphic we have, Maroon was not on the lineup at the time, and it was before he was traded. And when I had posted it in Thunderbolts, a lot of people had said, I think he's going to be the odd man out this year. You started looking, we started accepting that 4th line as just being a 4th line. It really seems this year they're going to try to get some productivity out of that 4th line, some less penalties. We really had that rough line with Maroon and Perry on there. It looks like this year they're going to go for really some 4 solid lines going.
Yeah. Corey Perry, he was a unrestricted free agent, so they could have brought him back, and they made that move to trade his rights to Chicago. So that gave Chicago the right to sign him before anyone else could.
2 days. For 2 days.
For what?
They had 2 days that they could talk to him before anybody else. So 48 hours. 48 hours.
He was signing that one right away.
Yeah. $4 million. And I've seen this debate going on too. There's no way in hell Corey Perry deserved $4 million. Nobody believes he deserved $4 million. Corey Perry doesn't even believe. Chicago had to make the salary floor. So they have to overpay these people to actually make the floor of the salary cap. So that is why Corey Perry got $4 million. And the Lightning were great in getting what they could for him. And Chicago got what they wanted, someone they could pay $4 million to.
Well, and he, kind of is just going to become a bodyguard for Bedard. So, So yeah, Corey Perry goes on to Chicago. Bellemare, this is that last piece of that 4th line, the school bus line, as a lot of us knew it. He was an unrestricted free agent, so the Lightning could re-sign him. I thought they might, because he would be a guy that you could have got at a discount. But he went to Seattle. I think the Kraken are slowly becoming the Tampa Bay Lightning fans' backup team. They're far away, so you don't have to worry about them being too close. And they got some of our guys up there now.
There's a major guy there that has made them the fan second team there.
It's not Bellemare that's going to really win over.
No, it wasn't Belly. People won't be crying at his welcome back.
So yeah, the 4th line is gone. And then we'll save the toughest one for last. If our guy Stash was here, he would be crying in his ice cream bowl. Alex Killorn signed with Anaheim. I knew he wasn't staying. So the first reports were $2 million that they offered him. And then when they made a little bit of room, they offered 2.5, I heard, over 8 years. So he would have been 41, 42. By then, we were my age.
Yeah.
So he would have retired before that contract ended. I mean, I wanted him to stay, but I don't know. Would you have signed him for 2.5? Would you have been okay with that 8-year 2.5?
Well, you knew he wasn't going to play those 8 years. There was no way he was playing those 8 years. It was just to get him the money and get him to stay here. For $2.5 million, I would have said yeah. But anything more than that, I really thought he was, even though he had a record season for himself last year, I don't think anything more than that 2.5 would have been beneficial for this team with the rest of what they had to spend in the next couple of years, because that would have been on us for quite a while there.
Yeah. So 805 games played, almost 200 goals. Longest tenured Bolt, which I now believe goes to Stammer.
Yes.
So yeah, Alex Killorn will be missed. So here's a good question for you, and I'd like to hear from the chat too. Do any of these guys make that Tampa Bay Lightning Wall of Fame, Hall of Fame? What are they calling it? It's called the Hall of Fame, right? I call it the Wall of Fame.
I think Killorn will.
He's got to be the one, right?
Killorn, I mean, being up until now the longest tenured, whether you liked him or you didn't, and I didn't like him, and years past you guys would see me and Stash clash on him. He was never my favorite. I always thought he was slow. I only thought he was really good on the PK. But I think he has to be on that wall as someone who really contributed for those 2 cup years.
Yeah, and he went on our guy Jay Retcher's show last week, and Zach, and had some kind words, and he kind of made it sound like he's definitely coming back here in 4 years, whether it's on the team or whether it's just a right around his jet ski.
Well, he was in Brandon that whole weekend in Lightning uniforms, skating around and practicing, which was odd because I remember some of our past players who had been traded and they were still training down here. They were required to turn their jerseys inside out so that the lightning bolt wasn't showing. One that came to mind was Valtteri Filppula. He practiced down here for several years after he was traded. And every year over in Brandon, he would have the jersey inside out because he couldn't represent the Lightning logo on there.
Yeah, and Mike Douglas says, dude, cast his check, good for him. I totally agree. I mean, he's at his age to get the biggest contract of his career, because he got a raise.
Yeah.
He really, I hate to say it, he struck lightning because he was one of the best free agents that were just out there this offseason. So Anaheim, I'm assuming, offered him the most money, and he took the most money because I don't think Anaheim's really going to be much of a Stanley Cup contender. Hey, maybe Alex Killorn's the new Pat Maroon, though. So, but yeah, with the changes comes new folks. And, I've been talking to a couple people about the Lightning and these changes, and you've got to make these changes. If you go back to look at the Chicago Blackhawks when they had their run, they weren't doing like the back-to-back cups like us, but they were kind of winning like every other year. And when they were doing that, they had their core players, but they were wheeling and dealing players in and out that entire time. So, if you think about last year's team, they didn't play that great all season long. Like, they had a couple good stretches, but the rest of the time we were like, are these guys going to be able to make the Stanley Cup again? Because it didn't look like it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, do you want to bring back the same team that couldn't beat Toronto in the first round? I don't. I want to get some new guys in here. So that is what they did. And let's talk about, I think I've got most of the new guys on here. We'll start with the guy who I think is going to be the biggest one, Connor Shootey. He's won 2 Stanley Cups before. He knows what he's doing. And the theme that you'll notice with these guys for the most part is they brought in just experienced veteran players. No one too flashy, which I know people always want during the offseason. But you got to take a look at our roster. We have the core. Even Alex Killorn was a role player on this team, really. So it's really about building around these guys that are, still in the prime of their career, kind of on the end side of that prime of their career. But, they still got plenty of juice in the tank. So you got to kind of surround them with guys that can get the job done.
Yeah. I think some of these, though, on a team that doesn't have a Stamkos, that doesn't have a Hedman, a Kucherov, Vasilevsky. I mean, Connor Sheary, you don't have to be he speaks for himself. I mean, he could be a star name on a team like a Seattle Kraken, who doesn't have that real big star. There's a couple teams that I could think of that he could be on there. Minnesota is one of them. Same with Glendening. That's a name that a lot of hockey people know. DeHaan, who, I'm looking in these things, and it's Sherry and Archibald. I'm more excited about DeHaan than a lot of them. But I really like the Sherry and the Glendening, and the same as what Tom Germano is saying about Archibald. I keep reading a lot about Archibald, and that seems to be a good pickup also.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys are solid players. If you've been watching the Lightning long enough, Luke Glendening from his Detroit days, back when they were still making the playoffs at least. So I think they're solid pickups. Like, it's not anything that like people are rushing to buy these guys' jerseys yet. But these guys are going to be the guys that are here opening night on the roster. There is an exception with that. I do think Sheary, Archibald, Glendening, DeHaan make opening night roster. Logan Brown was a guy that I added on here because the Lightning have him listed on the roster on their website. So he's not as an experienced player from St. Louis. But I just consider, like, they put him on the website. They must have him in the plans for next season. He is on a 2-way contract, though. So that 2-way contract means that he can easily be sent down to Syracuse. And we're going to have a couple situations like that. And the thing to look for with that is, who predicted Perbix coming out of nowhere in making this team. So hopefully we can find another player like that. Did you predict that? We got to go back.
I did say I really like Perbix coming from development camp the last couple seasons. I didn't think he'd be called up so quickly, but I definitely thought Perbix was going to be coming up there.
And Todd's got some good points here. I think Luke Glendening as a fourth line center is an upgrade over Belly. Face-offs, penalty kill, a guy that you want on your team instead of having to play against. So that'll be good. And then another good one by Todd here. Jonas Jonasson from Colorado is actually not listed on the roster on the Tampa Bay Lightning's website for the big squad. So that backup goalie spot is wide open.
But he is listed on cap friendlies.
He's on a 2-way contract, though, right?
On cap friendly, he's listed as signed as the backup for them.
Yeah, I don't think I'm sold on that. I think it's going to be basically an open job to get that backup role. And that'll be interesting because based on the comments we saw from Bassey last season, where he said his body didn't feel the same this season, they probably are going to give this backup goalie a lot more ice time. Now, the guy that I didn't put on the last image was Elliott. And, I know he won that last game, but if you looked at, I think it was like his last 3 games before that last 3 games, he was letting in 6 goals a game.
And now he's being linked to Toronto in the last 24 hours, where it really came down to his last game at Amalie, basically him saying he was retiring and having his son out on the ice with him, and how important it was for his son to see his last game, and that it meant a lot for the Lightning to play him that game. And then there's 2 different stories coming out of Toronto that they are talking to him about possibly being their backup because they're going through some arbitration issues where they might have to release their other goalie. And so he would be a cheap replacement there.
And I got to agree with Kim here. I can't say that we are a worse team now based on kind of the changes that we've made. Again, it's really about kind of surrounding Stamkos and Kuch and Point and Sergachev, our top paid defenseman, also Hedman. with the right guys around them. So the verdict's not out on what this team's going to look like. And, we're not the team to beat anymore, which I think is a nice thing too. It's not like, oh, Tampa's coming back to town. They've made 3 Stanley Cups in a row. We got to show up for this game. I think a lot of teams are going to start to sleep a little bit on the Lightning. Now, you can't sleep too much on Lightning when you got Cooch and Pointer coming to town, especially the way Pointer's kind of career is going. But I'm with you there, Kim. I like the moves that they've made considering what they were up against with this cap. So, but yeah, that's your new players. Again, I don't think we're going to see any changes. I think that's kind of what we're going to be looking at as we go into opening night here is Stamkos, Point, Cooch, and of course, these actual lines are subject to change. Hagel, Sorelli, Sheary. Nike's back. You got Nick Paul. Nick Paul is going to be a really interesting guy this year. Remember, we got Nick Paul for a long time at a pretty decent price. And he played really well the first half of the season, but he was almost invisible the second half of the season. And you see that all the time in hockey. It's almost kind of normal in hockey. Like, just look at Palat his last year. He couldn't score a goal the second half of the season, and then he went apeshit in the playoffs. Killer couldn't score a goal in the playoffs, that same playoffs, right? And both those guys were super streaky players. So if Paul can really kind of take that next steps, and I'd be fine, because that first half of the last season, he played a lot on that second line. And when he kind of dropped back to that third line, you saw him drop off a lot. I do have the asterisk next to Jeannot. Jeannot, as we talked about, we're talking about arbitration with him. He'll be on the roster. They just got to figure out what's going to happen with him, and might have to move a player if that arbitration doesn't go their way. And by the way, historically, the Lightning have agreed to terms before arbitration. They usually do not let it go to arbitration. So we'll see.
Yeah, I can't remember the last one that did go to arbitration.
I don't either. The one thing Gino's really got going for him is the fact that he scored so many goals his rookie season. So I would imagine the Lightning do not want to get to arbitration, because they're probably looking at these numbers and comparables and stuff like that. I looked at some comparable players, and you can go check out some of my videos on the Shooter and the Stash site. I did the longer one where it's a breakdown. I kind of did some comparables with Jeannot and our other RFA, Ross Colton, on similar players. And Jeannot, I compared him to, I forget who it was, but the player was only making 2.5, which is kind of right where they need him to be, hopefully a little less. So that is the one thing to kind of watch for, I guess, as we go out through the rest of this month to see what happens with that. But I think he will be back. I think a lot of people are kind of down on him, but remember, he got injured. And also remember back when we got Hagel, that first, it wasn't even half of a season when we had him after the trade deadline. Hagel wasn't that great. Sometimes it takes time for these guys to gel with the team, find their spot, get used to playing here. And I'm really hoping with Jeannot, we see that happen. So that third line is really going to be huge this season to see if any of these guys step up. And then your fourth line with Glendening, Archibald, and then we've got Kopke on there. That left wing spot's wide open. That could be ABB. That could be this other guy that we were talking about, Brown. But other than that, I think the roster's pretty locked in on offense, and defense is a little bit of a logjam on the back end with defense. You've got Hetty, Cerny, Sergachev, Perbix, Radish, I think, is going to get that spot. DeHaan's going to get that spot. I think that's going to be the top 6, but who's going to get that 7th spot? Because you'll notice that Bogo is not in that top 6. And if you listened at all, Bogo is on the block. I think they want to move Bogo. And I don't think anyone's taking him.
I think Fleury, I think all those 3 are actually on the block. I think they'll be happy to get rid of Myers, Bogo, or Fleury. That's Myers down in Syracuse. That's $1.2 million that you're putting in your AHL. That's not ideally what you want down playing for Syracuse Crunch.
The crazy thing is Myers played pretty good for the Crunch.
Right, he has. So, but not good enough that he's cracking this top 6. So if they're going to get him to be the 7th, then they got to get rid of Fleury or Bogo. You know, I personally would send Fleury down to the crunch myself and try to keep Myers up here and try to get rid of Bogo. And, you know, maybe you can find someone after some of these arbitrations hit. And there's still some players out there that have not signed, like Tarasenko.
He's not coming here. It's not happening.
He's not coming here, guys. There ain't no chance in hell we can afford him. Tarasenko, Kane. There's still plenty of players, just some of the big names that haven't. Kane, Dumba, Bailey, Tatar, Klepbaum, Jonathan Bernier. Those are just some of the ones that are still out there that haven't signed. And all these teams are in cap issues, any of your big teams. You know, we saw a lot of big contracts get signed this offseason, a lot of big names move teams. And when they moved to these, they got stronger. I thought Toronto picked up some good ones. Boston picked up some good ones. You had the Pens who, you know, picked up some good people. And
they're getting linked to Carlson too. Carlson is probably coming to the East, guys.
And they're getting these big contracts, which then down the road will probably put them in some kind of cap hell like us that we're currently in. But we got to get out of that. But we're going to have to find a team that's going to say, hey, I need someone to fill this spot. Take Bogo from me. You know, give me a bag of pucks.
Yeah, and you got those 3 defenders there that are just kind of sitting there burning cap space. I like Mary Ann's comment here. Who's our best scrapper on the team now that Maroon's gone? The way that I kind of looked at Maroon's departure is that's fine. You know why? Because Tanner Jeannot could be a younger, better scorer type of player than Maroon. So if he can kind of
actually wins the fights.
Yeah, right. He's an excellent fighter, as we all know from that first fight in the Lightning jersey. But yeah, if he can fill that role for Maroon and add, you know, a touch of scoring like he did his rookie season, that would be a huge upgrade. And I also have been comparing, all right, well, Killer's gone. Who's going to fill Killer's spot? I think Connor Sheary can do it. Like, you know, Killer was, you know, I think I'm a bigger Killer fan than you are, Thomas. But the thing with Killer is he's been surrounded by riches. Like, you put me on a line with some of these guys, and I'm going to find the back of the net, you know, several times. I scored a nice one last night, Schooley. I'll send you the video. But I think that's how I feel about Sheary. I feel like he could just kind of pop in and fill that spot with Killer. The thing that I did not like about Sheary is if you look back to last season, he didn't have a great last season. So he was up in Washington, and their team was just a mess. But he was getting first-line minutes. He was playing a lot. So hopefully he's not, you know, at a drop-off and can take advantage of playing with some of these better players now. Being on a better team. So that's a good question. All right. So that's the current roster. And again, I mean, do you think that much is going to change here?
I just want to see, I don't know if Kopi, I think he might make the opening night roster, but not as an opening night starter. So it's going to be interesting. Not sure, you know, who's going to take that spot. Could be Brown. You know, we lost who I thought to the Swedish league. What was his name? No, I can't even think of his name. The one that we got last year off of waivers and lost him on waiver and then got him back. Someone help me out. And then he just signed. He didn't re-sign with the Crunch this year. Balsers, that's it. Rudy Balsers. I really thought he was going to be up here, and I thought he was going to get a chance to make opening night roster. So it's kind of weird that he chose to go over there rather than stay in the league than something didn't happen. Kim likes Reifers, Simone Reifers.
But
I don't think he gets a chance.
I thought is he the guy that's also bolded for Europe? Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. He's the other one that went. So, and then we still haven't signed Walcott, who seemed like he was going to be an AHL person for life, kind of like a Conacher. We haven't signed him. So Crunch still have some things that they need to fill in also. So that I could see Kopke going there. I'm not sure who that last line is going to be. It's going to be interesting to see who makes opening night roster, which is 91 days away from today. We are Stamkos days away from opening night.
Yeah, and I want them to keep that last spot open. They got to start to get some of these guys in Syracuse up. I know, like ABB, give them one more shot. Give them one more shot, and then bury them down in Syracuse for the rest of the life.
Yeah, ABB, we have this debate at least
Every year.
Yeah, well, at least 3 times this year. I mean, every year. Anytime someone's doing bad, or someone gets hurt, it's bring up ABB, bring up ABB, bring up ABB. How many times do you get a shot until they decide you're a lifetime AHL person? That was a Corey Conacher. That was a Eric Condra. The Crunch have seen several of these guys who are just that. They do great in the AHL, and then they don't. Gabe Fortier,
He's still on the roster too.
Yeah, and they've given him, a handful of games here and there, but still has never really been a staple up here. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they do it. And we have seen many seasons in the past that opening night roster usually has an AHL person on there. I mean, Point got it. Colton's got it. We've seen several people on opening night have the AHL people on there, so it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's look at the draft. Did you watch the draft, Thomas?
No, God, no.
Picks, so that was exciting. But yeah, ended up with 5. I think we started with 2 or 3. I forget exactly how many, but ended up with 5. That 37th overall pick was for Ross. So we picked up Ethan. I don't know how to pronounce half these guys' names. Actually, most of them are easy because a couple of them are American. Gauthier? Did you catch how they pronounce it?
I think it's Gauthier.
Gauthier. So he's from the QMJHL, 6 foot, 193 pounds. He is, so I'm reading off of Athletics, kind of, they graded our draft class, and I'll let you guys predict in the chat what you think they graded our draft class as. But what they say about him is he's a middle of the lineup player. His skating's NHL average, puck skills above average, hockey sense average. His compete is above average. So seems like an average player.
The different things I heard people talk about him, that this was a good get for the Lightning.
Looks good, yeah.
Over losing Ross Colton, because you were going to lose them. So to be able to get someone when you weren't going to have even a pick into the 6th round, and to be able to have him on the board, they actually expected him to go late 1st round. So for him to be in the 2nd round still was good for the Lightning.
Yeah, very good skill and offensive IQ. Can beat defenders one-on-one at a high rate. So we'll see. The crazy part about the NHL draft is unless you're getting like the first 2 or 3 picks, you're going to see these guys for years. Like Isaac Howard, 1st round pick last year, still ain't going to see him this year.
But did great in development camp this year. Great in development. Had the hat trick. Great in development camp. I think that they really have something for him.
Now, the next guy, he does excite me a little bit. Jason Shagabe. First of all, I like the name. Second of all, he is straight out of high school. He was the Minnesota High School Player of the Year, and he was breaking TJ Oshie records when he was in high school last year. So he's got a lot of upside. Obviously, very, very young and raw. And if you look at his size there, he's that typical Lightning tiny winger that they love. Again, still, he's probably only 18 years old. So, but 5'9", 165, that's a tough size to make the NHL still. And I know Tyler Johnson was definitely smaller than that. Tyler Johnson probably weighed more, but Tyler Johnson was like 5'7".
I really like that pick. I really like that pick. You're right. That's what the Lightning tend to go for. And they usually have success. We have seen for Lightning, Amalie, Ice, those fast players, those small players have a lot of success on Amalie's ice, whether it's against us or for us. And I really like this pickup if he ever sees the ice at Amalie.
Yeah, I would immediately sync him up with Marty St. Louis, except he's with another organization.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But if they could have figured out how to get Marty to coach some of these younger guys, that would have been great. But maybe they'll show him some video or something of his workouts with like, you ever see those videos with Marty's fucking like tree trunk legs? It's like, all right, Marty's a little guy, but his legs ain't little. Like he was on a different level. So we'll see. I mean, in 4 or 5 years, this is the guy we might be talking about to make that opening night roster. And then just to kind of round it out here, you got Warren Clark, Jack Harvey, Ethan Hay. Clark's a big right-handed defenseman. Harvey's American center. And then Ethan Hay is also a center, I think, out of the good old United States as well. And the Lightning really need to find a way to get some of these diamonds in the rough. You remember back to when they started to build this championship team, they were finding guys in later rounds of the draft. And, you know, based on the lack of draft picks that they've had, they need some of these guys to hit if they want to be good moving forward once the current generation of players starts to move on. So that is your draft. Now,
I want to address something real quick that everybody's addressing here in the comments. And this comment here, unpopular thing to say, rebuilding is not a bad word. What type of package can you get for Stammer? Stammer, you can't. Stammer will finish as a Bolt. I have no doubt that this ain't going to be another like Vinny moment or anything. They haven't really had too many. Well, they haven't had any captains start as a Bolt and finish as a Bolt. So
isn't that the history of the Lightning? They don't have these guys.
No, they have never had one of their captains from start to finish. And I think Stamkos has been the face of this franchise for so long, even before he became the captain. There was so much on when he got drafted from Sarnia that I think he will forever be a Bolt, and that will be the end of that. And a package you would get for him, I don't know with the money he generates and with what teams can pay right now. I don't think you would get a huge package for him.
I'd clock that right away. If they didn't trade Killer, they didn't trade Palat on the last end of their seasons, the last year of their contracts, they're not trading Stamkos at the trade deadline. So Stamkos will be an unrestricted free agent at the end, like this time next year. So I believe they'll do what they can to sign him, but he's not going to get a raise. He's not going to make the same, I think, 7.5 or is he 8? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's going to have to, if he wants to stay here, he's going to have to go to like 5 or 6, I think.
He's making 8.5 right now.
He's going to have to make less. And, you know, the team players, they make that sacrifice. If you go back and look at how much he's probably made in his career, he's not in the same boat as Alex Killorn. He's made some money. So that'll be interesting. Now, here's a good question for everyone. You've got 2 guys that going into the offseason are going to be huge. And this is, again, next offseason. Who's top priority? Steven Stamkos or Brandon Hagel? Who are you signing first?
Well, I think you have to get the Stamkos deal. He's a UFA where Hagel's an RFA. So I think you have to go after the Stamkos first, knowing that you have the rights for Hagel.
Yeah.
But then you're losing all your defense too next year. I mean, UFAs for next year: Myers, Bogosian, DeHaan, and Fleury. So we ain't gonna have that problem on who's gonna be number 7 because all 3 of the number 7s are gone next year. But you still have Perbix at a cheap one for one more year. You got Chernak, who's gonna hit that, who's got that big contract. Hetty will be playing his final season next year under contract, and then you have Sergey with the big contract.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier, Sergachev starting now gets paid more than Hedman. He's our number 1 defenseman as far as pay goes. So I think ice time's going to follow. I think Sergachev's 24 years old. I mean, he might be 25. He did have a birthday like just recently.
Yes.
So he's 25 now. And did you see the stuff he's doing? Like
coaching.
He's out there in his hometown, Russia. And he's done this whole training camp with kids. He had his own child. He's really starting to mature. So I know a lot of you guys are thinking, I hope he's matured and gotten over some of his turnovers. But he's our defensive coach. Like, you got to take the good with the bad with Sergachev. So I'm excited to see what happens with him this season and keeping him on that power play line. And sky's the limit for Sergachev. He's our future number 1 defenseman, whether you want to say he is now or not.
Once he became a father, I think it became a different kind of Sergachev. And I'm hearing Braden Point had a child during this offseason. I haven't been able to confirm it. He is very private on everything. So it would be interesting to see next year. Me and a couple of people have been trying to do some investigation, but cannot find anything on whether or not. But that is the rumor that he just had a newborn. So April knows what I'm talking about. It's going to be interesting because we saw Stammers, Hedmans, we saw their lives all change different when they had kids too, where they were playing it more for their children and more to show their kids, and they became better players. So, we've seen Stammer's career just getting better and better ever since he had the second kid, and ever since Carter really took a liking to the game and wanted to be interested in the team. And so it's definitely interesting that Sergachev now is into this coaching, being a newborn dad, and here he is coaching this team, and it looks like he's doing more and more for hockey. So it's going to be to see them start maturing and take that next step into things.
Yep. And moving right into the prime of their career. So yeah, Sergachev and Point too, and I put Hagel in there too. It's going to be really exciting to see these guys getting into their prime of their career. And, does Point score 60 goals next year? That'd be freaking awesome. So yeah. What else we got going on this summer? Like, we still have 2-3 months until we have hockey. We probably won't do another show for another 2 months. I mean, there's been all this news for the last 2 weeks, but it's going to get really quiet here for a while.
Yeah, we got preseason. It was the cruise. The Lightning's got the cruise coming up.
That's right. Did anyone book the cruise?
I know a couple of people that did. There ain't a chance in hell I'm paying $1,000 to go on this cruise with.
And you miss a game, and there's not going to be players. I don't know why they didn't do it in the offseason.
We are doing a picnic. I am trying to secure the Thunderbolts will be doing a picnic. I'm trying to secure the park and the exact date. It's going to be in August. We do know that. I just haven't been able to secure which park we're doing it at. And then we're also going to look into possibly doing a cruise on All-Star Week when there is no hockey. So if you guys are interested in that, that could be something. You won't get drunk Dave Andrechuk, but you might get drunk Thomas or drunk Shooter if I can convince him to go. So we will be doing a group night. I think we're going to do a group night for the show. I think we'll also do a group night for Thunderbolts. So there's going to be, and I think we're looking into group night tickets for the preseason game up at Solar Bears in Orlando against the Florida Panthers. So here's I got a question for you. Since the Florida Panthers, went so far this year, we saw multiple people fighting with each other on whether or not we should be Florida Panther fans if the Lightning's not in it. What say you, Shooter? Who are you voting for in those finals?
That's a tough question. I'm good at hating the Florida Panthers. I'm very good at that. When they come here, I'm good at that. But I wasn't cheering for either team really to win. But I wouldn't mind hockey keeping the cup in the South.
Which I posted that in Thunderbolts, and it was almost a 50-50 split on whether people wanted it to stay in Florida and come back east, or if people wanted the last team to win it from the east be the Tampa Bay Lightning. And it was almost a 50-50 split. And people were messaging me and being like, this person's saying they hope the Panthers win, or this person, like, once the Lightning got out of it, who cares? I think as someone who went to that first game in Vegas, their fans are assholes. But it was nice to see
last second, so it was kind of rough. The very first year they were great.
Yeah, it was nice to see Marchessault win it. Now, Florida Panthers fans are always assholes too, and they always want to call it the COVID Cup, and we've spent years calling them our little brother and stuff like that. So, but then you had what's his face down there,
Verhaeghe.
Yeah, Verhaeghe. Sorry, I hated Carter. You had Verhaeghe down there, so. It was good that the Lightning had players represented on both teams, and then you saw Marchessault ended up, winning the trophy. So, good for Vegas.
Yeah, that's cool to see. I have a problem with Vegas too, and Seattle to some way, as far as these teams that are these expansion teams now have it way easier. They have a lot of advantages compared to when like the Lightning came into the league in the 90s. So for me, it's like, the Lightning had to, for 10 years almost, just kind of had to eat dirt in this league and just kind of, grow up on the mean streets of the NHL until they finally found success. And for Vegas to be in the Stanley Cup Finals that first year, and, you got to give credit to them because they made a lot of trades when they got some of these players in that expansion draft and put together a heck of a team. But it's way too easy to put together a great team with the expansion drafts. So I don't like the expansion teams because of that. And also because I don't want to see a freaking stadium series between two of them either this year. Or not stadium series. The Classic is in Seattle.
Yeah.
So I'm not a huge fan of them. Although I do like the league growing, and I like Seattle's, it seems like a really cool environment up there in Seattle. I'd love to go to a game up there.
It's Stephanie here. The way that NHL hands teams the expansion is disgusting. And the most recent, obviously, being Seattle. And, of course, we're hearing that there's going to be another expansion coming soon. But Seattle, I remember when all the experts were coming out and saying, well, look who was protected. I mean, look who they had left on the board, and people were like, I can't believe they didn't take.
A lot of guys.
Right. I can't believe they didn't take them. I can't believe they didn't take them. I mean, Montreal left Price on the board. I remember they didn't take Price, and everybody thought that was a huge mistake. And of course, now we know what Price, and then Price comes to the draft and mess up the draft for Montreal. So, it was really odd because we had so many people, and then they ended up taking Yanni, and we had other players who were obviously up for grabs that people wanted them to take, i.e. Killer. But Vegas, we knew right away that they were taking Garrison. It was, and you almost forget that Jason Garrison was the pick that Vegas took for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but that's who they took from us. And a quick thing about the about arbitration. We talked about Tanner's arbitration. It is scheduled for July 24th. A couple other players that are having it. Ross Colton is July 27th. I see someone had mentioned Dunn earlier, Vince Dunn from Seattle. His is the same day as Tanner Jeannot's. Kim just talked about Howden having a good finals for Vegas. His is the same day as Jeannot. Former Bolt, his is July 24th also. Samsonov, July 21st, Toronto. That's going to be a big telling one. That's going to be if they go all the way to this arbitration with Samsonov, then Toronto's probably going to have to release one of their goalies and buy one of their goalies out. And so it's going to be interesting what happens there. And that's where the Moose conversation comes in. So Samson takes them all the way there, then they're in some trouble there. You even have Swayman for Boston, who's up for arbitration on July 30th. It's not a FU to the team. I saw a lot of people say that when Jeannot picked arbitration. It's not an FU for the team. It's just
normal.
Yeah, it's just saying, hey, what can you guys offer me? Give me your final thing. This is what I believe I am. This is what, and it just gives them more time to deal. I saw on one of the groups, Jeannot was up, I want to say it was in Canada, and the guy was getting his skates sharpened and ran into Tanner Jeannot, and he was in a great mood and everything. So don't lose sleep over it. He's going to be on the opening night roster.
Yeah, and it could be a huge, huge part of this team moving forward. So it'll be exciting. He's an exciting player. If he can, like I said, if he can start to score some goals like he did that first year up in Nashville and add that physicality, which we really need from him now, that'll be huge for this team. What else? Stamkos won an award. That was cool. The Mark Messier Award. I hope they change that award to the Steven Stamkos Leadership Award someday.
Picked by Messier himself. And if you've seen the interviews from Stamkos, if you haven't seen it, go and check it out. It'll be a tearjerker. It really meant a lot for Stammer to get this, because this wasn't voted on by writers. This was picked by Mark Messier, who he has tons of respect for as a leader. So this meant probably one of the biggest awards the Stammer's ever gotten. This meant a lot to him. And I think he deserved that.
I think he should win it every year. I think he should be the one that picks who wins it. That would actually be pretty cool if you win it and then the next year you pick the next guy that wins it.
Yeah.
And then we did have Pointer up for Lady Bing.
Yeah, Lady Bing.
Yeah, but he didn't win it. It's a shame.
No, it wasn't even top three. But just to have him start being in that conversation, I think down the road you're going to see us. I think when his career ends, it's going to be like a 10-time Lady Bing finalist, 3-time Lady Bing winner. So I definitely think there's a Lady Bing in his future.
I hope so. He's starting to get the recognition he deserves. You score that 50 goals, you hit that 50 goal mark, you start to turn some heads. So I'm excited for him. We also got Bolt's Brew Fest. August 11th. I've only been to it once, and I think that was like the first time they did it. I'm not a huge beer drinker.
I went to the first. Yeah, I'm not a beer drinker except for, every once in a while. But yeah, definitely Brewfest doesn't do anything for me.
I might try to go just to get downtown. So August 11th, if anyone's going, hit me up at Shootey Shoots Instagram and back on Twitter. And then we do still have at We the Thunder Pod on Twitter. So you
when is it?
There. It's at We the Thunder Pod.
No. When is the date?
August 11th.
9/11.
No, August 8th.
Oh, 8. Okay. Whew. I'm out of it. This off season is too much off season. Too much off season.
I know. It feels like we still have a long way to go.
I know.
So stay tuned. We'll be back. We probably won't be back live for another month or two. Obviously, if something pops up, I'll call Thomas and we'll jump on. Maybe we'll talk a little bit after Jeannot signs, but there's just not going to be much that's happening for the next couple months. So, but we will be back for next season. Date and times to be determined. We'll do some watch parties and obviously Thunderbolts picnic. I always go to that. That's my favorite summer event. I lose at least 15 pounds just from sweating in the sun at that event. And I got some cool stuff for the giveaway for that. So keep me posted.
And we're working on some new guests this season. There's some places we definitely haven't tapped into, and so we're always looking for great guests and guests that you guys want to see. So if you guys want to see somebody, even if it's Greg Wolf again, if it's Sonia. Sonia posted in Thunderbolts the other day that she has not been traded. And I don't think I've seen any post in the 7 years since I created Thunderbolts have as many likes and comments on a post than her post saying she had not been traded. And being a member of other groups, I don't think you ever see that. So, even Sonia, Sonia comes in here and joins us and she'll pop in the chat every once in a while. Nigel was definitely a great one we got last year. Definitely see if we can get him again this year. Dave Randorf, he's already told us before he would do it. We're looking into some others. I definitely think Nigel was a big get that we got last year. Thanks to Monkey Cold Coffee and Dave Randolph. That's been a good relationship for the last 2 seasons. We've had him on. Of course, then Eric Erlson, Jay Retcher, although he's big timer now. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. And if you do want to get yourself some Monkey Cold Coffee, I don't think they have our promo code up right now, but I'll make sure we get that active again. You can use mine. I have one that's just Shooter 10, SHOOTER 10, and you get 10% off. I honestly drink a lot of coffee, and it's all Monkey Cold Coffee. I used to drink like 1 cup a day, and I drink like 2 cups a day easily now because I love that. I actually love the new one. Which is the toasted coconut rum, which is weird because I didn't think I would like that one, but I love that. That's like my favorite coffee. So if you want to go try it, you get 10% off using Shootey 10. It's not Shooter, it's Shootey. I have to get away from Shooter because a lot of people think negative things when you say, "Oh, there's a shooter." So we go Shootey 10. But yeah, we'll get another code going for the show. And if you want to help us out, if you are going to any events, a lot of concerts going on this summer. I hear Stash is covering some concerts. If you want to go shoot on the Stash page, I think he's doing Monday nights. And he's covering concerts and some other sports and just kind of more general, which is what he wanted to do for a long time. You can go check that out. But we got the SeatGeek code up for $20 off your first purchase, which is actually a really good deal. It's only the first time you use it, but you can sign up and use a different email the first time, every time. So you can use our code WTTPod, and then we got some more exciting stuff coming this season with that's kind of that stuff too. So, but everyone, go have fun, go to the beach, hide from the sun, do whatever you like to do this summer. I'm sick of it already. It's way too hot. I was telling Carly earlier that I'm ready to move out of Florida, at least in the summertime. I'll just be here for hockey season. Yeah, wake me up on October 10th, opening night. We'll be live.
Shooter's heading to Chicago tomorrow, so I put him on assignment to try to find Corey Perry. Or Bedard. try to find Bedard. Get us that interview.
I'll work on that. So I'll be live tomorrow night with Connor and the Worm. Right, well, stay tuned. Follow us on the socials. We'll be posting on Thunderbolts as well. The next time we'll be jumping on here. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next season. This has been We the Thunder. Don't forget to be the Thunder. That's it.